The boss ignored the new janitor until he revealed himself as the company's secret owner. The air in the opulent boardroom was thick, heavy with an uneasy silence that pressed down on Alastair Finch. It was punctuated only by the distant, almost imperceptible hum of the city and the faint, almost rhythmic clinking of ice in half-empty glasses that sat on the long, polished mahogany table. Alastair, disguised as the unassuming Arthur Peterson, stood before the three figures seated there, his gaze sweeping over them, absorbing every detail of their composure, or lack thereof. Reggie Thorne, the slick, calculating head of operations, wore a smirk that seemed permanently etched onto his features, a mask of self-satisfaction that even his expensive suit could barely conceal, hinting at the raw avarice beneath. Beside him, Gwendolyn Price, the head of finance, a woman whose beauty was as cold and sharp as a winter's blade, eyed him with a mixture of disdain and a peculiar, almost patronizing amusement. And at the very head of the table, Blaine Sterling, the self-proclaimed visionary and head of strategy, leaned back in his chair, a look of utter boredom painted across his face, as if Alastair's very presence was nothing more than an irritating fly buzzing incessantly in his ear. "The game is over," Arthur Peterson announced, his voice, usually soft and deferential, now resonated with a quiet authority that seemed to momentarily deflate the smugness that had permeated the room. He watched with a contained satisfaction as Reggie's smirk faltered, Gwendolyn's eyes narrowed into suspicious slits, and Blaine's posture straightened ever so slightly, a fleeting moment of surprise breaking through his practiced indifference. A flicker of confusion crossed their faces, quickly replaced by their characteristic condescension, a defensive reflex born of their inherent arrogance. "Arthur, old boy, have you finally lost your marbles?" Reggie chuckled, a coarse, dismissive sound that grated on Alastair's ears, a familiar unpleasantness. "The only game that's over is your pathetic attempt to cling to relevance in this company. We're discussing real business here, not your nostalgic ramblings about a bygone era." The implication was clear. Arthur, the supposed simpleton, was an antiquated relic, utterly irrelevant to their modern, ruthless world. Gwendolyn let out a short, mirthless laugh, a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "Indeed, Arthur. Perhaps you've had too much of Mrs. Vance's herbal tea. We are about to finalize the restructuring, and frankly, your input isn't required. You may leave." Her tone was cutting, a practiced dismissal designed not just to dismiss, but to humble and diminish anyone she deemed beneath her. It was a common tactic, honed over years of corporate power plays. Blaine, ever the grandiloquent one, waved a dismissive hand, a gesture of profound impatience. "Arthur, please. This is a private executive meeting, a strategic discussion of vital corporate maneuvers. Unless you've suddenly acquired a brain for high finance, which, judging by your attire and general demeanor, is highly unlikely, your presence is an imposition. Run along now, before you trip over your shoelaces." His words dripped with a thinly veiled contempt, a mockery of everything Alastair represented, or rather, everything he pretended to represent. Alastair Finch, the true architect of this vast corporate empire, the man who had built it brick by painstaking brick alongside his father, felt a surge of cold satisfaction, a profound sense of irony. They still didn't see it. They still treated him like a simpleton, an inconvenience, a relic of a bygone era, utterly oblivious to the true identity concealed beneath the drab suit. Their blindness was absolute, their arrogance a towering monument to their own impending downfall, a hubris that would surely be their undoing. The irony of the situation, the sheer, delicious mockery of their ignorance, was almost too perfect. He, Alastair Finch, stood before them, the invisible hand that guided their fate, and they, in their short-sighted greed, merely saw a bumbling, insignificant old man. This was precisely why he had embarked on this elaborate charade, why he had donned the drab suit and the humble persona of Arthur Peterson. The time for revelation was upon them, and the reckoning would be swift and severe, a precise and surgical strike. This moment, pregnant with the weight of impending revelation, was the culmination of months of meticulous planning and a lifetime of disillusionment that had slowly, insidiously crept into Alistair's very soul. He had not always been a man consumed by suspicion. Indeed, he had inherited the sprawling Finch Industries from his late father, a man of unwavering integrity who had built the company on the bedrock of loyalty, respect, and a genuine commitment to its employees. For years, Alistair had striven to uphold those very values, believing that a company thrived not just on quarterly profits, but on the well-being, dedication, and mutual respect of its people. He had trusted his executive team implicitly, empowered them, and given them the autonomy he believed they deserved, a testament to his faith in their shared vision. Yet, a subtle shift had begun to permeate the very fabric of Finch Industries, a chilling wind that whispered of change, not for the better, but for the darker, more cynical. Whispers, initially faint and easily dismissed as corporate gossip, began to grow louder, rumors of aggressive cost-cutting measures that bordered on unethical, an increasing disconnect between the executive floor and the factory floor, a widening chasm between decision-makers and the people affected by those decisions. There was a disturbing lack of empathy emanating from the highest echelons of leadership, a focus on abstract numbers divorced from human consequences. Alistair, a man of quiet observation rather than impulsive action, had initially attributed these to the natural friction of a large corporation adapting to a volatile market, the necessary growing pains of a dynamic entity. He had given his team the benefit of the doubt, believing that their occasional ruthlessness was merely a necessary evil of modern business, a hard edge required to maintain competitiveness in a brutal landscape. He hoped it was simply a more efficient, if less compassionate, way of doing business. But then, the anonymous letters started arriving. Unsigned grievances, slipped under his office door or delivered to his private residence by unmarked couriers, from long-term employees, detailing sudden, unexplained shifts in their benefits, unannounced changes to their pension plans that significantly reduced their future security, and a pervasive atmosphere of fear and insecurity that gripped the company like a cold hand. These weren't just disgruntled individuals, these were loyal workers, some with decades of service, whose pleas resonated with genuine distress. They spoke of a culture where old-timers were viewed as liabilities, where loyalty was scoffed at and ridiculed, and where the bottom line eclipsed all human considerations, all ethical boundaries. Alistair found these accusations deeply unsettling, a gnawing unease that settled in his gut. They struck at the very heart of his father's legacy, a legacy he had sworn to protect with every fiber of his being. He remembered his father's favorite saying, a mantra that had guided his own business philosophy: a company is only as strong as the weakest link in its chain, and the strongest chains are forged with trust and compassion. He saw his father's principles being systematically dismantled, brick by painful brick. He confronted Reggie, Gwendolyn, and Blaine, individually and collectively, raising concerns about the anonymous complaints, urging them to remember the company's core values, the human element that distinguished Finch Industries. He spoke of the importance of the employees, the human element that truly drove their success, the dedicated individuals who translated plans into reality. He watched their faces intently, observed their subtle reactions, searching for any flicker of remorse or genuine concern. Reggie would offer glib reassurances, blaming disgruntled elements or misinformation campaigns. Gwendolyn would cite cold, hard financial data, dismissing the human cost as necessary adjustments for market competitiveness. Blaine would wax poetic about disruptive innovation and streamlining for the future, words that sounded grand and progressive but felt utterly hollow, devoid of any real substance. Their eyes, though, betrayed a deeper truth, a dismissive glint that spoke volumes. There was a thinly veiled impatience, a profound detachment from the very people they managed, a casual cruelty that made his stomach churn. They were masters of corporate jargon, adept at cloaking their true intentions behind a veneer of professionalism, but Alistair, a man who had learned to read people from decades of navigating complex business deals and intricate negotiations, sensed the rot, the corruption festering beneath the polished surface. He realized then that a direct confrontation would yield nothing but more obfuscation and practiced lies. Their answers were rehearsed, their arguments impenetrable, their masks firmly in place. He needed to see, to hear, to experience their true nature without the mask of his authority influencing their behavior. He needed to become invisible, to become a fly on the wall, to observe them not as their CEO, but as someone utterly insignificant, someone whose presence they would ignore or dismiss entirely. This realization was both painful and illuminating. It meant acknowledging that his trusted lieutenants, the very people he had entrusted with his father's legacy, might be systematically dismantling it for personal gain, for avarice and power. The thought was a bitter pill to swallow, a crushing weight on his conscience, but Alastair Finch was not one to shy away from uncomfortable truths, no matter how profoundly they wounded him. The plan was audacious, risky, and utterly unprecedented for a man of his standing. He would disappear from public view, feigning a prolonged medical leave for a rare and undisclosed condition, a convenient fiction that would grant him the necessary absence. His longtime, utterly loyal personal assistant, a woman who had served his father before him and knew the family's deepest secrets, would manage his affairs from a secluded location, fielding executive calls and maintaining the illusion of his remote leadership, a ghost CEO. Meanwhile, Alastair would undergo a subtle but effective transformation. He consulted with a discreet team of professionals, makeup artists who specialized in subtle alterations, voice coaches who helped him soften his assertive tone, even a stylist who specialized in making people blend seamlessly into the background. He adopted a slightly stooped posture, a softer, less assertive voice, and the simple, unassuming wardrobe of an administrative assistant, practical, bland, forgettable. He chose the name Arthur Peterson, a name so unremarkable it would melt into the background of any office, utterly devoid of any distinguishing characteristics. The decision to assume the role of an administrative assistant was deliberate and strategic. It would place him directly in the heart of the office, in the administrative trenches, close enough to overhear casual conversations in hallways and break rooms, to witness the day-to-day interactions between the executives and their subordinates, and to truly understand the pulse of the company from the ground up, from the perspective of those most affected by corporate decisions. He needed to see how Finch Industries operated when its true leader was perceived to be absent, when the watchman was believed to be asleep, when the rules were off. He needed to witness the true character of those he had entrusted, unvarnished by the presence of power, untainted by the need to impress their CEO. It was a test, a crucible designed to burn away the facades and reveal the raw, unadulterated truth of their intentions. He would see if the company's soul, instilled by his father, had indeed been corrupted beyond repair, or if there was still hope, a flicker of the old spirit remaining. And so, Alastair Finch, the powerful CEO, vanished, and Arthur Peterson, the humble new hire, quietly began his tenure at Finch Industries, a silent observer in his own empire, a ghost walking among the living. The first few weeks as Arthur Peterson were a revelation, a descent into a world Alastair had only ever viewed from the lofty heights of his executive office, a world he had conceptualized but never truly experienced. He found himself navigating the labyrinthine corridors of the administrative floor, a bustling ecosystem of cubicles, buzzing phones, and the incessant hum of office machinery. The drab, beige walls and flickering fluorescent lights were a stark contrast to the plush carpets, rich mahogany, and panoramic views of his former domain. He felt like an anthropologist observing a foreign tribe, a silent, unassuming shadow in the heart of his own creation, witnessing its slow decay. He found himself fumbling with simple tasks, not out of genuine incompetence, but because his hands, accustomed to signing multi-million-dollar contracts, were now unaccustomed to the precise, repetitive motions of stapling reports or sorting mail. He often had to suppress a knowing smile when a younger colleague patiently showed him how to use the complex coffee machine, a machine he had paid for but never touched. His initial interactions with Reggie Thorne, Gwendolyn Price, and Blaine Sterling were a masterclass in their casual cruelty, a constant reminder of the disdain they held for those beneath them. Arthur was routinely dismissed, often with a wave of the hand or a snide remark about his age or slowness, as if his very presence was an affront to their elevated status. He was tasked with menial chores, delivering coffee that was never quite hot enough to their exacting standards, fetching documents that were inevitably misplaced by them, and arranging schedules that were perpetually in flux due to their whims. He became the invisible errand boy, a non-entity whose existence was acknowledged only when something was required of him, a mere tool in their hands. One particularly grating morning, the fluorescent hum of the office feeling like a constant pressure behind his eyes, Arthur was sent to retrieve an urgent file from Blaine Sterling's office. Blaine, sprawled in his executive chair like a bored potentate, a half-eaten gourmet sandwich on his desk, barely looked up from his tablet. "Arthur, is it?" "Yes, the Peterson fellow." "Fetch me the Project Chimera file from the lower left drawer. And be quick about it, man. Time is money, and yours is hardly valuable." As Arthur, with a feigned slight stiffness, rummaged through the drawer, Blaine took a call, his voice booming and echoing even through the closed office door. "Yes, Mark, about those pension cuts. Absolute genius, wouldn't you say? The old-timers won't know what hit them until their checks are 30% lighter. They're too busy reminiscing about Mr. Finch Sr.'s founding spirit to realize the world has moved on. Honestly, these dinosaurs are costing us a fortune. We need to shed the dead weight. And yes, make sure it's legally ironclad. We don't want any pesky lawsuits from these relics." Blaine laughed, a cold, calculating sound that sent a shiver down Alastair's spine, a deep, unsettling chill. He felt a profound sense of betrayal, a deep-seated anger bubbling just beneath the surface of Arthur's placid demeanor. These were the people he had trusted to uphold his father's legacy, and they were openly mocking it, dissecting it for profit, celebrating the very destruction of the company's soul. Another incident, equally disturbing, involved Gwendolyn Price, whose perfectionism masked a chilling lack of compassion. Arthur had inadvertently spilled a few drops of coffee on a non-critical report while delivering it to her desk, a minor accident. Gwendolyn, her eyes narrowing to slits like a predator, had erupted. "Peterson. Are you utterly incompetent? This is a disgrace. Do you realize the value of the paper you've just soiled? Honestly, I don't know why Mr. Finch insists on keeping these antiquated positions. You're a liability, Arthur. A true testament to the company's outdated hiring practices. We should be automating positions like yours, not filling them with senile old men." She didn't even wait for a response, turning her back dismissively, as if the air Arthur occupied was suddenly repulsive. Alastair, cloaked as Arthur, felt the sting of her words, but it was not for himself. It was for the countless unseen administrative staff, the backbone of any company, who were treated with such casual cruelty, their contributions utterly devalued, their humanity dismissed. He saw how easily she conflated a minor accident with a character flaw, how readily she dehumanized those she deemed beneath her, reducing them to mere obstacles in her path to efficiency. Reggie Thorne, perhaps the most outwardly jovial yet inwardly cynical of the trio, was no better. Arthur was often present during Reggie's informal meetings in the executive lounge, where the true depths of their avarice were revealed, conversations he was supposed to be too insignificant to register. "We're looking at a major Q3 bonus for the executive team," Reggie announced to a small group of his cronies, oblivious to Arthur tidying a nearby shelf, pretending to dust. "And it's all thanks to our brilliant efficiency drives. Pension adjustments, streamlining the health benefits for anyone over 60, even subtly encouraging early retirements without proper severance. These legacy costs, as Blaine so eloquently puts it, are finally being pruned. Mr. Finch Sr., bless his traditional heart, would have a fit, but he's not around to stop us, is he? And the current Mr. Finch is conveniently indisposed. It's open season, boys." He chuckled, and the others joined in, their laughter a chorus of greed, a sickening symphony of self-interest. Alastair, as Arthur, felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach, a physical manifestation of his disgust. They weren't just cutting costs, they were actively harming people, stripping away the security nets that dedicated employees had worked their entire lives to build, dismantling the very foundation of trust. Their casual disregard for human suffering, their almost gleeful delight in the misfortune of others, was breathtaking in its callousness. Amidst this relentless tide of contempt and callousness, a single, unwavering beacon of light emerged, a quiet defiance against the pervasive chill of the executive floor: Elara Vance. Elara, an administrative assistant in her early 60s, was a woman whose warmth seemed to radiate from her very being, a gentle force in a harsh environment. Her cubicle, adorned with small, personal touches, a vibrant potted African violet, a faded photograph of a younger couple, a hand-stitched coaster beneath her perpetually steaming mug, was an oasis of humanity, a small patch of warmth in a desert of indifference. From Arthur's very first day, Elara had offered him a comforting smile, a genuine warmth that cut through the icy indifference of the office. She was the only one who consistently addressed him by name, not as Peterson or old man, but as Arthur, delivered with a gentle, respectful lilt that made him feel seen, truly seen. She noticed his quiet struggles, the way he fumbled with the complex coffee machine, the slight tremor in his hands when he was nervous or stressed from maintaining his persona. "Arthur, dear, let me help you with that," she'd say, her voice soft as a summer breeze, as he wrestled with a jammed printer, a task that required an almost comical effort from the CEO of a major corporation. She never made him feel inadequate, never hinted at his perceived incompetence. Instead, she'd patiently guide his hand, offering a quiet word of encouragement, a simple, non-judgmental kindness that felt profoundly moving. She would share small anecdotes about her family, or a recipe, or a memory of a beloved colleague who had retired, little snippets of humanity that made the sterile office bearable. One blustery afternoon, as Arthur sat hunched over his desk, feeling the immense weight of the executive's casual cruelty pressing down on him, the emotional toll of his charade becoming almost unbearable, Elara approached him with a small, wrapped sandwich and a thermos of fragrant herbal tea. "You look a bit down, Arthur," she said, her eyes filled with genuine concern, a rare commodity in this office. "Here, I made too much. My special chicken salad. And some ginger tea, it's good for the soul." She placed the offerings on his desk, her smile warm and inviting, a simple gesture of human connection. Arthur, accustomed to being ignored or rebuffed, was momentarily speechless. He looked at the simple, heartfelt gesture, a stark contrast to the materialistic, self-serving world he had been immersed in for months. "Oh, Elara, you truly are too kind," he managed, his voice thick with unaccustomed emotion, a lump forming in his throat. Elara chuckled softly, a gentle, melodic sound. "Nonsense, dear. It's what we do. We look out for each other here. Or, at least, we used to. That's the way Mr. Finch Sr. always wanted it. He built this company on kindness, on looking after his people, not just numbers. He used to walk the floors, knew everyone by name. Asked about their families, their troubles. It wasn't just about the numbers then, it was about building something meaningful, something that lasted beyond a quarterly report. A family, really." Her gaze drifted off, lost in a wistful memory of a time long past. "The founding spirit," he called it. "Seems to have evaporated like dew in the morning sun these days, doesn't it?" She sighed, a deep, sorrowful sound that echoed Alistair's own grief for what had been lost. Arthur listened, his heart aching with a complex mixture of gratitude for Elara's unwavering compassion and profound sadness for the systematic erosion of his father's legacy. He recognized the pain in her voice, the quiet lament for a bygone era, a time when decency mattered. He knew, intuitively, that Elara, despite her cheerful demeanor, likely faced her own struggles, perhaps even the fear of losing her job or her pension, just like the other old-timers the executives so readily mocked. Yet, despite her own potential vulnerability, her compassion remained undimmed, a testament to her inherent goodness, her unbreakable spirit. He saw her quietly helping younger colleagues navigate complex software, patiently explaining convoluted company policies, and always offering a word of encouragement or a shared laugh that lightened the oppressive atmosphere. He overheard her on the phone, gently reassuring an elderly employee about a benefits inquiry, something the official HR department seemed too busy or too indifferent to handle with care, too focused on streamlining. Elara was the quiet anchor, the moral compass of the administrative floor, a living embodiment of the values his father had championed, a silent sentinel against the tide of corporate callousness. As the weeks turned into months, Alistair's conviction hardened, forged in the crucible of his observations. He witnessed countless instances of the executive's callousness, the heartless dismissal of a long-term employee who had fallen ill, the casual discussion of outsourcing entire departments to cut costs without a single thought for the human toll, the endless stream of jokes at the expense of the legacy employees, and the founding vision. He heard them openly mock Arthur, behind his back, their snide remarks about his supposed incompetence and antiquated ways fueling their own twisted sense of superiority. He saw Blaine making personal stock trades based on information gleaned from his efficiency drives, and Reggie diverting company funds to shell corporations for dubious consulting fees. Gwendolyn manipulated quarterly reports to hide the full extent of the pension cuts from the shareholders, creating a false picture of financial health. The rot was deeper, more insidious than he had even imagined. But for every moment of their cruelty, there was a quiet act of kindness from Elara. A shared biscuit during a coffee break, a sympathetic ear when he feigned frustration with a particularly baffling piece of software, a simple, understanding nod that spoke volumes, a silent acknowledgement of the shared burden of being insignificant in their eyes. Her genuine compassion became a stark, undeniable contrast to the executive's greed, a powerful counterpoint that solidified Alistair's resolve. The test was complete. The results were in. The rot was deep, almost cancerous, but so too was the resilience of the human spirit, embodied so powerfully by Elara Vance. He knew, with absolute certainty, what he had to do. The time for Arthur Peterson to disappear, and for Alistair Finch to return, had arrived. The stage was set for the climax, a dramatic unveiling that would shake Finch Industries to its very core, a thunderclap of truth. The day of the annual shareholder meeting arrived, cloaked in an air of manufactured anticipation, a thin veneer of corporate cheer. It was an event meticulously designed to project an image of stability, prosperity, and unwavering leadership, a carefully orchestrated performance for the company's investors. Reggie, Gwendolyn, and Blaine, resplendent in their tailored suits and confident smiles, occupied the front row, exuding an aura of undeniable power, their faces a mask of practiced sincerity. They had spent weeks meticulously crafting a presentation filled with dazzling charts, optimistic projections, and vague promises of future growth, all designed to mask the insidious changes they had implemented, the true nature of their predatory actions. Arthur Peterson, as was his new routine, was instructed to set up the presentation equipment, ensure the microphones were working, and then discreetly take a seat at the very back of the hall, a part of the anonymous crowd, a silent observer among the expectant faces. He moved with a practiced humility, his eyes scanning the room, taking in the faces of the shareholders, a mixture of old money, institutional investors, and a few younger, eager faces, all looking for signs of success. The air buzzed with a nervous energy, a blend of hope for dividends and skepticism about the economy. Then, Blaine Sterling, ever the showman, approached the podium, his voice booming with feigned enthusiasm, a carefully rehearsed warmth that didn't quite reach his eyes. He began his address, painting a glorious picture of Finch Industries' future, a future built, he implied, on his visionary leadership, on bold, decisive actions. We are streamlining, innovating, shedding the dead weight of outdated practices and burdensome traditions, he declared, his gaze sweeping over the audience, a subtle sneer playing on his lips as he subtly gestured towards the back, where the old-timers and administrative staff were seated, implicitly dismissing their worth. Arthur felt the collective sigh of resignation from the older employees in the room, their faces etched with quiet worry, a shared understanding of the veiled threat. Just as Blaine launched into a detailed explanation of the pension modernization plan, a euphemism for the substantial cuts he had so openly mocked, a plan designed to enrich the executives at the expense of loyal employees, the grand double doors at the rear of the hall swung open with a resounding thud that echoed through the hushed space. All heads turned, a ripple of curiosity turning into a collective gasp that rippled through the room, a wave of stunned silence. Standing framed in the doorway, silhouetted against the bright hallway lights, was a figure of undeniable authority, a presence that commanded attention. He was impeccably dressed in a dark, bespoke suit, meticulously tailored, his posture erect, shoulders back, his gaze sharp and commanding. He was no longer the stooped, unassuming Arthur Peterson, his very silhouette exuded power. This was Alastair Finch, the true CEO, returned, reborn. Beside him stood his longtime, formidable legal counsel, Mr. Elias Thorne, a man known for his unwavering loyalty, his impeccable discretion, and his razor-sharp legal mind. Alastair began to walk, slowly, deliberately, down the central aisle, his gaze fixed on the front. Each step was a measured beat, a drumroll to an inevitable reckoning, the soft click of his polished shoes on the marble floor the only sound in the oppressive silence. Reggie, Gwendolyn, and Blaine, who had been laughing and chatting among themselves just moments before, their faces still smug from Blaine's performance, froze. Their faces, previously confident and self-assured, now registered a mixture of disbelief, then confusion, and then, slowly, a dawning, terrible horror. Blaine's speech faltered mid-sentence, his eyes wide and unseeing, his carefully constructed composure crumbling into a mask of abject terror. As Alastair reached the front, standing directly before the executive table, his gaze settled on Reggie, Gwendolyn, and Blaine, a gaze that stripped away their masks and laid bare their guilt. His voice, now clear, resonant, and devoid of any trace of the meek Arthur, cut through the oppressive silence like a surgical blade, cold and precise. "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying the weight of his true identity, a profound authority. "I apologize for the theatrical entrance, but it seemed necessary given the extraordinary circumstances that have come to light. My name is Alastair Finch, and I am the CEO of Finch Industries." Reggie, regaining a fraction of his bravado, stammered, his voice cracking, "Mr. Finch. What are you doing here? We were told you were indisposed. And who is this man? Arthur, is that you?" He gestured wildly towards Alastair, then back to the empty seat at the rear where Arthur had been, a desperate attempt to cling to the illusion. Alastair's eyes held a glint of steel, cold and unyielding. "Indeed, Reggie. It is I. And yes, I was indisposed. Indisposed in the guise of Arthur Peterson, a humble administrative assistant, a position I took to truly understand what has become of my father's company under your visionary leadership." He paused, letting the words sink in, watching the color drain from their faces, seeing the dawning comprehension of their profound error. Gwendolyn's jaw dropped, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the pallor of her skin, her eyes wide with unadulterated shock. Blaine looked as if he had seen a ghost, his earlier arrogance replaced by outright terror, a primal fear in his eyes. "I have spent the last 6 months observing, listening, and experiencing firsthand the culture you have meticulously cultivated," Alastair continued, his voice rising, filling the large hall, each word a hammer blow. "I have heard your casual dismissals of our employees' worth, your cruel jokes at the expense of their dignity, and your open discussions about stripping away the very benefits that people have worked their entire lives to earn. I have seen your callous disregard for the founding spirit that built this company, a spirit of loyalty, respect, and compassion that you have so gleefully mocked and systematically dismantled." His gaze then swept across the hall, landing on Alara Vance, who sat in the third row, her hand clasped to her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning understanding, tears silently streaming down her face. He offered her a brief, reassuring smile, a silent promise of restoration, before turning back to the cowering executives. Blaine, your Project Chimera and pension modernization plans are nothing short of calculated theft, designed to enrich yourselves at the expense of loyal employees. Reggie, your efficiency drives are thinly veiled attempts to extract every last penny from the pockets of our dedicated staff, redirecting it to your own. And Gwendolyn, your financial analyses are not just cold, they are heartless, devoid of any human consideration, a perversion of true finance. He motioned to Elias Thorne, who stepped forward, holding a thick stack of documents. Mr. Thorne has prepared the necessary documentation. Effective immediately, Reggie Thorne, Gwendolyn Price, and Blaine Sterling are hereby terminated from their positions at Finch Industries, with cause. All company assets, including company cars, credit cards, and access to all systems, are revoked immediately. Furthermore, given the nature of your egregious conduct, the company reserves the right to pursue all available legal remedies for breach of fiduciary duty, gross misconduct, and outright fraud. The words hung in the air, a final, definitive hammer blow that shattered their carefully constructed worlds, their illusions of invincibility. The three executives, once so self-assured, now looked utterly broken, their faces a canvas of shock, disbelief, and burgeoning panic. The entire hall erupted in a stunned murmur, a cacophony of whispers and gasps, then slowly, a rising tide of applause from the administrative staff and older employees, a quiet triumph. The masks had fallen, and the true face of Alastair Finch, a man of unwavering resolve and profound principle, stood revealed. The game was indeed over, and they, the arrogant players, had lost everything, their empires reduced to dust. The fallout from Alastair Finch's dramatic revelation was immediate and devastating for the disgraced executives, a corporate earthquake whose tremors were felt far beyond the boardroom. The news spread like wildfire through the company, carried on the whispers of relieved employees, and then into the broader corporate world, a story too sensational to ignore. Reggie Thorne, Gwendolyn Price, and Blaine Sterling, who had once prided themselves on their impenetrable connections and unassailable positions, found their carefully constructed empires crumbling around them, their reputations obliterated overnight. Reggie, the glib and outwardly charming head of operations, was the first to experience the full force of Alastair's wrath, a precise and humiliating dismantling. His company car, a gleaming luxury sedan he'd flaunted with such arrogance, was repossessed from the company parking lot before he even left the building, its engine silenced. His access badges were deactivated with a click, his phone cut off mid-call with a potential new client, leaving him sputtering. The media, catching wind of the unprecedented CEO undercover story, descended like vultures, eager for every juicy detail. Reggie's carefully cultivated image as a shrewd, modern businessman quickly transformed into that of a heartless corporate villain, his face plastered across news channels and financial blogs. His calls went unanswered, his reputation was in tatters, and the lucrative consulting offers he had been secretly pursuing vanished overnight, leaving him with nothing. The legal proceedings initiated by Finch Industries for breach of fiduciary duty and various other misdeeds ensured that his personal wealth, painstakingly amassed through years of dubious dealings, would be significantly depleted, leaving him financially crippled. He was a pariah, stripped of his power, his prestige, and soon, much of his fortune. The man who had mocked old-timers for their financial insecurity now faced a future of his own, equally uncertain, equally bleak. Gwendolyn Price, the icy head of finance, fared no better, her cold ambition turning to bitter ashes. Her carefully guarded professional image, built on a foundation of ruthless efficiency, shattered into a million pieces. The news reports highlighted her callous remarks about employees, her cold dismissal of human suffering, and her eagerness to slash benefits for her own gain. Her name became synonymous with corporate greed and inhumanity, a cautionary tale. Recruiters, who had once courted her aggressively, now shied away, unwilling to tarnish their own reputations by associating with her, her phone silent, her inbox empty. Her meticulously planned career trajectory, aimed at a CEO position in another major corporation, crashed and burned in a spectacular inferno of public condemnation. Her vast financial expertise, once her greatest asset, became her greatest liability, tainted by her unethical practices, a mark of shame. She found herself utterly alone, isolated by her own choices, her ambition turning to ashes in her mouth, her cold beauty now reflecting the stark reality of her profound isolation. Blaine Sterling, the self-proclaimed visionary, suffered the most public humiliation, a mockery of his once inflated ego. His grand pronouncements and condescending demeanor, once seen as leadership qualities by some, were now parroted across social media, his words twisted into sardonic jokes. His face, once featured in glossy business magazines as a rising star, became a meme, a symbol of corporate villainy, a punchline. His visionary projects were revealed to be cynical schemes designed to enrich himself and his inner circle at the expense of the company's long-term health and its employees' well-being, exposed as nothing more than elaborate scams. He faced not only legal repercussions that threatened to strip him of his remaining assets but also an absolute collapse of his professional credibility. No company would touch him, no board would consider him for even the most minor role. The man who had dismissed Arthur as a senile old fool, as an irrelevant relic, now faced a future where he was the truly irrelevant one, his grand pronouncements echoing only in the hollow chambers of his own spectacular failure, a cautionary tale for all who sought power without principle. While the architects of greed faced their stark reckoning, Elara Vance found herself on the receiving end of a transformation that seemed almost too good to be true, a dream she had long given up on. As Alastair Finch concluded his blistering indictment of the former executives, his voice echoing in the stunned silence, he turned to face the hushed assembly, his gaze seeking out Elara, who sat in disbelief. "And now," Alastair announced, his voice softening, a gentle warmth replacing the previous steel, "I would like to address someone who truly embodies the spirit of this company, the spirit my father instilled, and the spirit I intend to restore to its rightful place." His eyes met Elara's across the room, a profound connection passing between them. She sat frozen, her hands still clutched to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes as she slowly processed the magnitude of what she was witnessing, the unexpected turn of fate. "Elara Vance," Alastair continued, his voice ringing with genuine respect, a heartfelt tribute, "for months, you have shown unwavering kindness, integrity, and compassion in a workplace that had become cold and unforgiving, a place where such qualities were devalued. While others sought to dismantle, to destroy, you quietly nurtured. While others dismissed, you truly cared. Your small acts of kindness, your genuine respect for your colleagues, and your unwavering belief in the true values of Finch Industries did not go unnoticed. They were the very light in the darkness I sought." Elara, overwhelmed, could only shake her head, a silent protest against such public praise, a humble rejection of the spotlight. "Therefore," Alastair declared, his voice firm and clear, projecting through the hall, effective immediately, "Elara Vance is promoted to the newly created position of Director of Employee Well-Being and Corporate Culture. Your primary responsibility will be to ensure that the values of respect, empathy, and support are woven into every fabric of this company, from the executive suites to the factory floors. Furthermore," he added, a twinkle in his eye, a hint of the man who had played Arthur, "as a token of our profound gratitude and as a testament to the fact that kindness truly does have its own reward, the company will be providing Elara with a fully paid-off home, a comfortable retirement plan that will ensure her future security, and a substantial bonus in recognition of her invaluable contribution to the true spirit of Finch Industries." Elara's eyes widened, disbelief warring with overwhelming emotion, her breath catching in her throat. A gasp rippled through the hall, followed by a spontaneous, thunderous burst of applause, a heartfelt ovation from the employees who had witnessed her quiet grace. Tears streamed down her face, tears of shock, of profound gratitude, and an almost incomprehensible joy that bubbled up from deep within her. She had simply been herself, quietly performing acts of kindness, never expecting anything in return, never seeking recognition. The thought of a paid-off home, of complete financial security in her later years, was a dream she had long ago filed away as unattainable, a distant fantasy. She had faced her own quiet struggles, the increasing cost of living, the nagging worry about her meager pension, but she had never let it harden her heart. And now, the universe, through the unexpected return of the true CEO, had repaid her generosity 1,000-fold. It was a dizzying, beautiful moment, a profound affirmation that goodness, despite the cynicism of the world, could indeed be its own most potent, most magnificent reward. Months had passed since the dramatic upheaval at Finch Industries, and the transformation was profound. The corporate landscape, once dominated by the cold, calculating machinations of Reggie, Gwendolyn, and Blaine, had undergone a complete metamorphosis. Alastair Finch, back in his rightful place at the helm, worked tirelessly to meticulously dismantle the harmful policies implemented by his former executives, rooting out every last trace of their corruption. He reinstated the full pension benefits, revised the healthcare plans to be more inclusive and supportive, and launched new initiatives focused on employee training, professional development, and a renewed sense of community within the company. The pervasive atmosphere of fear that had gripped the employees had dissipated, replaced by a cautious optimism, a burgeoning trust that slowly but surely began to re-establish itself, healing the wounds of betrayal. The change was palpable, radiating through every department. The factory floors hummed with renewed purpose, efficiency born not of fear but of dedication. The administrative offices buzzed with genuine collaboration, a spirit of mutual respect replacing the previous tension. A quiet pride began to ripple through the ranks, a sense of ownership and belonging. Alastair had made good on his promise to restore the founding spirit, and the employees, the true heart of Finch Industries, responded with unwavering loyalty and renewed dedication, giving their best to a leader who genuinely cared. He was not just a CEO, he was seen as a guardian, a leader who truly understood the value of human capital beyond mere numbers on a spreadsheet, a man who walked the talk. Elara Vance, now the Director of Employee Well-Being and Corporate Culture, flourished in her new role, her inherent warmth finally given a platform to bloom. Her office, no longer a cramped cubicle but a spacious, welcoming room with a panoramic view, became a haven for employees seeking guidance, support, or simply a kind word, a place of solace and understanding. She spearheaded mentorship programs, organized company-wide events that fostered camaraderie and team spirit, and ensured that every employee felt heard and valued, their concerns addressed with empathy and respect. Her inherent warmth and empathy, once quiet acts of defiance, were now the guiding principles of the company's HR and culture departments, institutionalized for the future. She had moved into her beautiful, new, fully paid-off home, a place of peace and security she had never dared to dream of, a tangible symbol of the universe's unexpected generosity. Her retirement, once a distant, uncertain prospect filled with worry, was now a comfortable certainty, allowing her to live out her golden years with dignity and joy, free from financial anxieties. She often shared her homemade cookies with Alastair, just as she had with Arthur, a quiet continuation of their bond, a testament to the genuine connection they had formed in the shadows, a shared secret and a shared triumph. Alastair often found himself reflecting on the entire ordeal, the journey from CEO to Arthur and back again. He would sit in his expansive office, looking out at the city skyline, a sense of profound peace settling over him, a deep satisfaction in a job truly done. He had faced the ugliness of human greed, the chilling indifference of those driven solely by profit, the cynical dismantling of everything he held dear. But he had also witnessed the unwavering light of human kindness, exemplified so beautifully by Elara, a beacon in the darkness. He understood now, more deeply than ever, that true leadership wasn't just about managing assets and maximizing profits, it was about nurturing people, fostering a culture of respect, and upholding the values that truly mattered, the intangible bonds that made a company great. The deceptive ploy of Arthur Peterson had been a painful but necessary journey, a brutal test that had stripped away the illusions and revealed the raw, unvarnished truth about the people he had trusted, a truth that had wounded him but ultimately made him stronger. He had learned that character, in its purest form, is not forged in the spotlight of success or during times of prosperity. No, true character, like gold refined in a furnace, is best revealed in the crucible of adversity, in the quiet corners where no one thinks they are being watched, where one's true nature can emerge unmasked. And kindness, often perceived as a weakness in a ruthless world, is in fact the most powerful currency of all, a force that transcends material gain. It is a seed, once planted, that always finds a way to blossom, often in the most unexpected ways, and its rewards, though sometimes delayed, are always richer and more enduring than any material gain. Goodness, in the end, truly does find its just and magnificent reward, a triumph not just of justice, but of the human spirit. If you found this story compelling and you're looking for more tales of poetic justice, hidden heroes, and the triumph of good over greed, then this is the channel for you. We delve into the depths of human nature, exploring stories that remind us that integrity always finds a way to shine. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another captivating story. We love hearing from you. What was your favorite moment in Arthur's transformation? Have you ever witnessed someone's true character revealed under pressure? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.